A cook, armed with little more than a ladle and a sidearm, stumbling through the frozen chaos of a collapsing front line. His duty was to feed men, not to fight them. But on one desperate, frozen morning, he would face a decision that defied all military logic. Could a single, unprepared soldier, far from his kitchen, achieve what entire battalions had failed to do? This is not a legend. This is the true story of the cook who captured an enemy general. The date was December 23, 1944. The location, the shattered, snow-covered hamlet of Lauwkert, Belgium, just kilometers from the rolling tide of the German Ardennes offensive, the Battle of the Bulge. Here, elements of the United States 28th Infantry Division, the Bloody Bucket, battered and retreating after the brutal fighting in the Hürtgen Forest, were attempting to establish a brittle defensive line. Among them was the 110th Infantry Regiment's headquarters company, and one very lost company cook, Private First Class James B. Barlow. To understand the sheer improbability of what transpired, one must first grasp the landscape of disaster. The 28th Division was shattered. Having endured some of the war's most savage fighting in the Hürtgen, its regiments were at less than half strength, its men exhausted, its equipment depleted. They were meant to be in a quiet sector of the Ardennes to recuperate. Instead, on December 16th, they were hit by the full, furious weight of the German 5th Panzer Army. The 110th Infantry was effectively destroyed as a cohesive force, its companies isolated, surrounded, and fighting to the death at roadblocks in villages like Clairvaux and Hosingen. Headquarters, companies, clerks, cooks, and drivers suddenly found themselves on the front line. PFC James Barlow, a 22-year-old from Illinois, was one such man. His world had been field kitchens, coffee urns, and ration boxes. Now, it was one of chaos, confusion, and survival. By December 22nd, the command structure was in tatters. Isolated groups of American soldiers filtered west through the dense, snow-laden pine forests, trying to rejoin any friendly line they could find. Barlow had become separated from his kitchen detail during a frantic displacement. Armed only with his standard-issue .45 caliber M1911 pistol weapon, he was far less familiar with than his meat cleaver. He was alone, cold, and behind what were believed to be enemy lines. His sole objective was survival. Little did he know, fate had placed him directly in the path of a critical German command element. For the Germans, the offensive was already behind schedule. The vital road junction of Bastogne was besieged but holding, and the northern shoulder of the Bulge had solidified. To maintain momentum, General Hasso von Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army needed to push breakthrough forces west. This required constant movement and daring from his spearhead commanders. One such commander was General Major Gerhard Franz Day, the highly capable Chief of Staff of the 47th Panzer Corps, a key architect in the planning of the offensive. On the morning of the 23rd, Franz was forward, conducting a personal reconnaissance near Lauwkert, assessing routes for his panzer. He traveled not with a large escort, but with a small, fast-moving staff car, believing the area to be secure. Dawn on the 23rd brought a bitter, crystalline cold. The temperature hovered near 0 degrees Fahrenheit. A fresh blanket of snow covered the signs of war, but could not mute the distant, echoing thump of artillery to the north and west. PFC Barlow, having spent a freezing night in a woodcutter's shed, knew he had to move. Stamping, feeling back into his boots, he checked the 7-round magazine in his .45, a pitifully small comfort against the unknown. He set out, not as a hunter, but as a lost man hoping to find his way home. Meanwhile, in the gray pre-dawn light, Generalmajor Franz finalized his plans. He was an officer of the old Prussian school, meticulous and brave, confident that the American forces in this immediate area were either dead, captured, or fleeing. He opted for a minimal escort, a single Kübelwagen field car with his driver and one aide. He carried vital maps and situational assessments intended for the forward panzer divisions. The risk in his professional estimation was low. The roads, though icy and narrow, were clear of enemy troops. By 0800 hours, the small German vehicle was rolling slowly down a tree-lined lane east of Lauwkert, its engine the only sound in the frozen quiet. Barlow, meanwhile, had stumbled upon a farm track. His senses, heightened by days of fear, were screaming. Every shadow in the pines seemed to hold a threat. He moved from tree to tree, the crunch of his own footsteps in the snow alarmingly loud to his ears. He was, in every sense of the word, a non-combatant adrift in a combat zone. His only advantage was a desperate, animal-like awareness of his surroundings. By 0830 hours, the two parties, one a symbol of Germany's last great gamble, the other a fragment of a broken American division, were on a collision course. Barlow, hearing the distinct putter of an approaching vehicle, froze. Panic surged through him. This was it, a German patrol. He fumbled with the safety on his pistol, his cold fingers clumsy. He had two choices: flee into the woods and hope to avoid detection, or stand his ground. In that moment of sheer terror, training he scarcely remembered kicked in. He crouched behind a thick snow-covered hedgerow lining the track, peering through the brittle branches. The Kübelwagen rounded the bend, moving at a cautious pace. Barlow could see the outlines of 3 men in field gray, the distinctive shape of German officers' caps. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was no lone motorcycle scout. This was an officer's car. He counted the enemy. 3. He counted his own bullets. 7. The odds were impossible. Pause. What happened next was not born of courage, but of a desperate, reflexive instinct. As the car drew abreast of his position, perhaps just 20 yards away, Barlow did the only thing he could think to do. He stood up. He stepped out from behind the hedgerow, directly into the middle of the narrow track, and leveled his M1911 at the driver. He yelled the only German word he knew, shouted from training films and the chaos of the past week. Halt! The Kübelwagen skidded slightly on the icy ruts, lurching to a stop. For a heartbeat, there was perfect, stunned silence. 3 experienced German soldiers, including a general staff officer, stared at the solitary, shivering American soldier pointing a pistol with visible uncertainty. The absurdity of the scene was palpable. France's aide, seated in the back, slowly moved his hand toward his own sidearm. The crisis was immediate and absolute. Barlow was alone. He had no backup, no supporting fire, not even a trench to dive into. He was exposed on a deserted road, facing 3 armed enemies sitting mere feet away. One wrong move, one moment of hesitation, and he would be cut down. The sheer weight of his isolation threatened to paralyze him. He was a cook, not an infantryman. This was not his duty. In the car, General Major Franz quickly assessed the situation. His military mind analyzed the angles, the lack of other American troops, the solitary figure before him. He saw the uncertainty in Barlow's eyes, the way the pistol wavered slightly. He began to speak in calm, authoritative German, instructing his driver and aide. He likely believed this was a scout from a larger, hidden unit. To rush a single, seemingly nervous soldier would be reckless if others were covering him from the tree line. It was a standoff built on a mutual misunderstanding, one side fearing an invisible platoon, the other fearing the imminent end of its war. Drop your weapons, Barlow shouted in English, gesturing wildly with his free hand. The Germans, not understanding, simply stared. The aide's hand was now clearly on the butt of his Luger. The tension was a physical force, colder than the winter air. Barlow knew he had seconds before the situation exploded. He took a step forward, the pistol now focusing squarely on General Major Franz, whose rank insignia and greatcoat marked him as the leader. He made a throwing-away motion. Pistol. Barlow tried, combining his one German word with the universal language of a threatening gesture. Raus. It was a crude, desperate pantomime of command. Inside the Kübelwagen, a silent debate raged. Franz was a veteran of the Eastern Front. He knew the stakes of capture. The maps and orders in his possession were highly sensitive. Yet, the tactical picture was unclear. Was this an ambush? Where was this American's unit? The eerie quiet of the woods now seemed menacing, hiding infinite possibilities. A single shot here would bring any nearby Americans running. The risk of attempting to overpower this lone soldier, if he was indeed alone, was minimal. But the risk, if he was not alone, was the failure of his mission and his capture regardless. It was a calculus of command under the most bizarre circumstances. Barlow, sensing the shift, knew he had to project an authority he did not feel. He raised his voice, a sharp crack in the silent woods. Out of the car. Now, he stepped closer, until the barrel of his .45 was only 10 feet from the general's face. His finger tightened on the trigger. The moment stretched, brittle and fragile as ice. Then, slowly, with a look of profound resignation and perhaps a flicker of professional curiosity at this strange turn of events, General Major Gerhard Franz nodded. He spoke a quiet, sharp order to his men. He opened the car door and stepped out into the snow, raising his hands. His aide and driver, confused but obedient, followed suit, reluctantly placing their sidearms on the seat of the Kübelwagen. But the crisis was far from over. Barlow now had 3 prisoners and 1 pistol. He was still utterly alone. He had to secure them, move them, and somehow deliver them to American lines that could be miles away. He gestured for the Germans to move away from the vehicle, his mind racing. How does one man guard 3? He ordered them to turn around and face the car. Placing their hands on the hood, he quickly patted them down. Finding only a ceremonial dagger on Franz, the vital briefcase and maps remained in the vehicle. The turning point was not a single act of violence, but an act of audacious improvisation. Barlow, his heart still pounding, made a series of rapid, critical decisions. First, he retrieved the Germans' weapons from the car, tossing them deep into the woods. He then motioned for Franz to get back into the passenger seat. He ordered the driver back behind the wheel. The aide, however, he directed to the rear bumper, using hand signals and the ever-present threat of his pistol. He conveyed a surreal order. The aide was to push the car. With the driver in neutral, the German staff officer began physically propelling the Kübelwagen down the frozen track. Barlow walked beside the vehicle, his pistol trained on General Major Franz inside. It was a ludicrous procession, a high-ranking German officer chauffeured by his own pushing aide, all under the guard of an American cook. This ingenious solution solved multiple problems. It prevented a swift escape attempt by the driver. It physically exhausted one prisoner. It created a slow-moving, controllable convoy. And it provided Barlow with transportation for his most valuable captive. For nearly an hour, this bizarre group moved west. The squeak of the tires in the snow and the labored breathing of the pushing aid, the only sounds. Barlow was navigating purely on instinct, hoping each bend would reveal an American checkpoint. Fortune, finally, favored the bold. As they neared the outskirts of a larger village, the distinct sound of American voices reached Barlow's ears. He signaled for a halt, cautiously advancing. He identified a ragged defensive position manned by elements of the 28th Division's military police and scattered infantry from the 109th Regiment. With renewed vigor, he marched his prisoners forward, calling out his identity and status. The stunned American guards saw a sight they would never forget: a lone, grim-faced PFC herding a German general and his staff toward their lines. Using the enemy's own vehicle as a prize. In moments, General Major Franz was in secure custody, his briefcase and maps seized. The intelligence haul was immediate and significant. Situation maps, unit dispositions for the 47 Panzer Corps, and upcoming objectives. Image 25. Barlow drained. Sitting on ammo crate with helmet. Barlow, his mission complete, suddenly felt the overwhelming fatigue of the last week crash over him. He had done it. With a cook's ingenuity and a soldier's last reserve of nerve, he had turned a moment of personal crisis into a staggering intelligence coup. The outcome of PFC James B. Barlow's unbelievable morning was profound. Generalmajor Gerhard Franz was the highest-ranking German staff officer captured on the Western Front up to that point. The documents seized from his car provided U.S. First Army intelligence with critical real-time insights into the strength, intentions, and immediate objectives of the 5th Panzer Army's spearhead. This information helped solidify the American defensive plans in a fluid and perilous sector. For his actions, which combined conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, James B. Barlow was not awarded the Medal of Honor, but something rarer in context. He was presented with the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest award for valor. The citation read, in part, that he single-handedly captured a German general officer and 2 members of his staff, securing vital enemy documents. A dry, official summary of a scene of pure, improbable drama. The human cost of the wider battle was, of course, horrific. The 28th Division suffered nearly 6,000 casualties in the Bulge, but Barlow's story became a beacon, a reminder that in the chaos of war, heroism is not the sole province of the frontline rifleman or the daring pilot. It can reside in the most unexpected of men, armed with nothing but resolve and a desperate cleverness. James Barlow returned to Illinois after the war, seldom speaking of his frozen morning on a Belgian farm track. General Major Franz survived captivity and later served in the post-war German Bundeswehr. The legacy of this event is one of sublime irony and enduring human spirit. It stands as a testament to the fact that in the Second World War, the line between the mundane and the monumental was often vanishingly thin, erased by chance, decision, and the sheer, unpredictable will of the individual.